Welcome to PhD with Woman on It, Hack the Future. My name is Beata Young, and today's PhD Positivity Hacks Delivered will be by Dr. Gilly Kahn. Topic: ADHD, multitasking, and leading like a boss. Episode 149 starts here. This is a pre-recorded version, so bear with us in case you want to ask questions. You can always reach out to our channels or to our Woman on It Gmail account. Let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women on IT, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my mojo, and empathy is critical when you're working on ADHD, multitasking, and trying to lead like a boss. Now, let's go to our topic. Are you tired of feeling overwhelmed and like you can't get things done? You might not be scatterbrained. Millions of successful women have ADHD. Join Dr. Gilly and me, a clinical psychologist. Dr. Gilly is a mama bear and a woman's empowerment advocate as she dismantles the myths of ADHD and unlocks the secrets in front of us to multitasking mystery, effective time management, and becoming a badass leader. In this interview, we'll discover how ADHD actually boosts your strengths, why multitasking is a myth and what to do instead, and finally, this very critical time management that is essential in every role you take, whether you want to be a leader or just want to carry on and enjoy your work-life balance. Now, Dr. Gilly, where in the world are you joining us from today?
Wait, let me just double check on that. Just kidding. Yeah, so I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States.
Beautiful location. We just discussed how blissful it is over there. And I'm joining from Toronto, and you're probably, viewers, whoever is watching us live today, you're watching the pre-recorded version while I'm in mid-air going on the way to New York. Right now, I'm still in Poland, in Toruń, the birthplace of Nicolaus Copernicus, that famous astronomer who's also famous for multitasking because he was a man of many great achievements, including mathematics, astronomy, astrology. He was also a priest, and some even claim he was a woman. There you go, LGBTQT. That was so last year. Anyway, Dr. Gilly, let's start with a couple of questions we prepared earlier. So what is really ADHD, and what are the symptoms that qualify someone to say, I've got ADHD?
Okay, so ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder or condition. And to be diagnosed with ADHD, you need to see a mental health professional like a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And ADHD is really starting to be understood as more of a deficit in regulating attention or with challenges with regulating attention as opposed to an attention deficit. So it isn't that people with ADHD can't pay attention, it's that they're paying attention to the wrong things or they're paying attention to too many things at once. So it's hard for them to stay on track. So right now there are 3 presentations of ADHD that you can be diagnosed with. It's important to keep in mind, though, that these presentations can change over time. So while you could be diagnosed with one presentation, it might change when you get older. So in my mind, the presentations don't really matter that much, but you're going to see them out there. So I'll just very briefly outline them for you. So the first presentation of ADHD is called predominantly inattentive presentation. The second one is hyperactive impulsive, and the third one is combined. For predominantly inattentive, the symptoms mostly characterize things that don't involve hyperactivity. So it's more executive functioning challenges, which are difficulties remembering things, difficulties with focusing on one task for a certain period of time. The hyperactive impulsive presentation is more about movement and overactivity. So that's more of like the obvious boy who can't sit still. And then the combined presentation includes both of those symptoms, the criteria.
Well, and I guess it was a good start because you corrected yourself. First, you said it's dysfunction, then you said it's actually a condition, because that way we can embrace the human nature with its messiness, beauty, and the ugly parts of it. Because we have to look at the positives, as I always say at the end of our show. When you look at positives, the positives get more positive. And so going back to the fact that I'm just multitasking while I'm listening to you, I'm looking for a pen and also thinking I've had a pen somewhere, but clearly I do not. But then I'll have to rely on my memory, which is sometimes very fuzzy, especially when you're multitasking with your brain. So how to combat that? How can we focus on one thing and get back to the track of one thinking only when your brain got used to multitasking?
Yeah, well, that's the golden ticket, isn't it? Like, I mean, that's the struggle with having ADHD. So, I mean, I have ADHD, and so I think it's just leaving things as they are and having expectations in the same way that you would expect just people in the typical population to concentrate is unrealistic, because like you were saying, like every brain is wired differently, but people who have ADHD, that's the challenge. It's having tunnel vision, you know. But there are situations in which we have a surplus of attention, or like excessive attention to a degree, and that's what hyperfocus is. So you may have heard of hyperfocus in the trade media. I mean, there's a lot of terms that are not part of the criteria or not even mentioned or described in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. But people just know about them because they know that they're common, that people say that they experience them. People with ADHD say that. So hyperfocus is when you really have tunnel vision, you're super interested in one thing, and you're able to sit for a long period of time. In fact, some people, this is not true for me, but some people will lose track of time because they are so focused, and it will make them late to things. But for me, the number one thing that has been the most helpful, and as a child, you're a little bit limited in this respect, but as you get older, you start to gain more freedom to explore the things that are interesting to you. And I found overall for myself and for the people I work with who are neurodivergent, that really embracing their interests and finding out what's really important to you and what is naturally just very interesting to you, that's where you're really gonna thrive and make a difference in the world. If you try and try to do something that you're not interested in, if this is the way that your brain is wired, it's a waste of time. Like you're banging your head against a wall.
So we have to work around it. We have to find, just like that saying by, I believe it was Kant or some other famous philosopher said, find something you like doing and you will never have to work ever in your life. Now, although there are things that we have to do because nobody else can do, especially when it comes to female entrepreneurship, we have to multitask and we have to do many things that we don't enjoy doing. What would be your approach to do the things that you're not so fond of doing, not losing the hyper focus? Of course, we can't demand hyper focus because I believe it will make you depressed. Like, for example, accounting is so mundane for me. It really, I'm postponing it. I've got this imposter syndrome. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll think about it tomorrow. And it's the end of the month, and my accountant is really upset with me. How can we do that? How can we prepare ourselves and combat that fear of, I'll do it tomorrow?
Yeah, that's a really good question. First of all, you have an accountant, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first step. Yeah, if it's something that you can get help with, that's actually one of my pointers. And so just kind of preparing for this podcast, I literally just opened my book that I'm working on, and I have a bunch of bullet points with strategies, just like tips that I think would help with these specific topics. But one of them is don't be afraid to ask for help. I think a lot of people who are very intelligent and they have ADHD, they feel like they need to do everything, or like they have to juggle everything. And a lot of them are even afraid to ask for help. But if it's something that's you're not very good at, or that's not interesting to you, and you're able to hire someone, or you're able to have someone help you with that and divide that within the family, then you should do it. Sort of like how I'm a psychologist, but there is no way on earth that I can do. I mean, we'll see. Maybe one day this happens, but I really don't think it will, that I'll be a solo practitioner. Like, there's just no way. I can't work alone. I can't juggle all of the responsibilities of being a clinical psychologist, because it's more than just seeing clients. And that's the part that I enjoy. So I really just want to focus on that. So there's nothing wrong with asking for help. But when you're in a situation where no one can help you and you really need to do it alone, there are ways to make less appealing tasks more appealing. And a lot of it has to do with kind of like simple, basic psychology. Like if you think back to Skinner, Pavlov, those are kind of the founders of behaviorism. There are different segments of psychology, and behavioral psychology was one of the very early ones. And it's all about pairing and forming associations in your mind, and reward and reinforcement. And so once you learn, because at the core, people are very simple. We're driven by certain things, and then we run away from certain things. Like, we generally run away from tasks that are boring or that make us uncomfortable, and we run toward things that are pleasurable, or that are fun, or make us feel good. And so that's why it's so helpful to pair something that isn't desirable with something that is. For example, when I do laundry, sometimes I'll have like a little container with little candies, and I will snack on the candies while I'm taking the laundry out. Or I listen to my favorite music while I'm folding laundry. Other examples, having a specific routine where you're kind of easing yourself into a task, so it just doesn't seem like so scary. So for example, like for me, I love making coffee. Coffee helps a lot of people with ADHD too. So I make coffee, and then I sit down and I start slow. Like I will open up, there's text on the bottom of the screen now. I'm sorry. There's the surplus of attention. I will open up my laptop and start looking through emails, and then ease my way into the task that I've been putting off or procrastinating. So pairing something undesirable with something desirable.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, and especially those who suffer from multitasking insomnia, we can promise you instant gratification. We will have some tips and hints. But before we do so, Dr. Gilly, I would like to ask you, because I came across this a very interesting definition, executive function. And I was wondering, executive function describes the cognitive skills or mental processes that allow you to do things like pay attention, absorb, remember, stay on task, and ignore distractions. It's all like a rocket science to me. Multitask, regulate emotions, monitor, and just adjust your own behavior according to new information or changes in our environment. One thing, though, that many people struggle is changing that behavior. You told us about the simple task of pairing it something desirable with non-desirable, also pre-planning. But really, I wonder about all these people who are listening to us and they want to get to the nitty-gritty. How can you keep them focused on the topic of today's discussion without, giving too much AI buzz, bingo buzz?
Bingo buzz?
I mean, like buzzwords, and we are going to talk about, this and the other, and you think you're gonna get reward, and then you just get distracted because you think about that laundry and the candy, and you wish you had a candy right now.
How do you get yourself to focus more on the task at hand rather than the thing that's pleasurable?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good question. So there are ways to set up an environment that will make it easier for you to pay attention. I think overall, what you're asking has a lot to do with individual differences. So yeah, there are people with ADHD, but even people with ADHD have differences between them. So the first step is to identify what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. And everyone has strengths and weaknesses. So it's not like you need to, sugarcoat it. And the first step is to understand and acknowledge, like, this thing is really hard for me. And then you make a specific plan that works for you based on what you're really good at and what you're not so good at. And so for me, for example, it's really hard for me to concentrate when there's a lot of noise around. So I always have my noise canceling headphones handy to block out sound. My family is also aware that I get irritable if they try bothering me while I'm trying to concentrate on an important task. So I will block out time and make it very clear to everyone that I'm working. So please don't bother me, because distractions can really get me off track. So being able to concentrate, having a space that kind of works for you. For everyone, that's different, but I like sitting in a space where there's a window. And so over time, you just kind of learn this works and this doesn't work. And then you create like a specific kind of outline for yourself of what kind of environment works best for you to be able to concentrate. And so that way you can really highlight and use the pairing and the operant conditioning, like the rewarding yourself even at the end. When I finish this task, then I'm going to be able to watch that Netflix show that I really want to watch.
Well, I hope you're enjoying chatting today and talking about how to combat multitasking dilemma while staying on track. We know that ADHD is a treatable condition. So apart from giving yourself tasks, I've heard also quite good thing or good approach is through meditation or setting yourself living in the moment. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's actually a part of my favorite type of therapy. And I use it with almost all my clients, unless they think very concretely. So the type of therapy I'm referring to is called acceptance and commitment therapy. And once you learn more about it, you'll start to understand why I guess I do therapy or think about the world in the way that I do. But mindfulness is a really big component of it. And mindfulness is about being in the present, and it has a very big sensory component to it. So being able to really focus on what's happening around you using your senses. And that's very grounding. It's very relaxing. But I think even most importantly, it leads to a fulfilling life. And actor acceptance and commitment therapy, it's all about creating meaning or a sense of fulfillment in your life, as opposed to happiness. Because when you ask yourself, at what point am I happy? It's vague. But if you can identify the things that are important to you in life, your values, for example, creativity, humor, things like that, and you're able to do things in your life that align with those values, that leads to a fulfilling life. And it's different. It's a lot deeper. And when you're doing those things, you should be doing them mindfully. So let's say, like, for example, I'm a psychologist, but also throughout my life, since I was 14 or even younger than that, I've loved creative writing, and I just can't live without it. There's, I think, just this piece of me, a really big part, that's just artistic and creative, and I need it in my life. And so now I'm writing my debut book. It's about ADHD in women. But while I'm writing it, I'm really just soaking it in, like enjoying it, writing and then taking a step back and reflecting. And so I think, incorporating mindfulness into your career is important because it can really help you enjoy it more.
And the working title is Allow Me to Interrupt, right? Of the
Yes.
book. So, do you have plan when you're going to finish it?
The first draft is due November 15th. So yeah, you guys can all be aware now. Great for me.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, but the pace so far has been good. I'm actually pretty impressed with myself. And I think what has really helped me is just making it a project that's mine. Like I said before, I think it's so important to just, focus on what you're passionate about. So once I get to a point where I think, oh, I really love this, I want to put it in a book, or you know what, I can't get myself to write this, I'm just not going to include it. Like when you can be the boss, like the title of this episode, it really helps.
Absolutely. Be the boss you want to see in others, but also we always want more boss ladies. So why did you target females in your book?
I targeted females because they're, in terms of ADHD, actually, the criteria were developed on and for mostly boys. It was like a very big percentage of the samples that were being used to include the criteria and the diagnostic and statistical manual were composed of boys, like little boys. And that's why so many adult women have flown under the radar and have gone undiagnosed until recently, when more people have been coming out and describing how their ADHD symptoms are different than what is written out in the DSM.
Well, if you look at females' life, and I'm thinking about especially mothers who have to cope with work, children, household, and so on, it is difficult not to multitask. It is difficult to actually do one and keep the hyper focus when your child is begging for attention while you're cooking and something else is happening. So, Dr. Gilly, I was always thinking, just like many people's perception, it's the ADHD usually happens when there are kids at school and then they grow up and maybe they may have some symptoms like, for example, I don't know, clicking a pen or something other than that. However, we know that also women have symptoms. Are there different symptoms? Are they similar? What's the prognosis there? What is the research there?
Yeah, so here's the challenge. Because the criteria were developed on mostly boys, it's like trying to take something that was developed for one gender or one sex and then trying to apply that to the other one. And that's a big limitation. In just healthcare research in general, it's very scary because although there has been more of an emphasis on including more women in clinical trials for the understanding of different health conditions, there still is not enough research including like a representative sample of women. But beyond that, even when women are included, a lot of studies just fail to even test for sex differences. And they'll just combine all the results and look at the outcome. And that's a problem because, there's one psychologist who I really love who says that comparing men to women could be like comparing apples to oranges. You can do it, but then also you need to compare women with ADHD to women without ADHD because women's bodies are different than men's bodies. And there's one book I just love. It's The Female Brain. And in the book, the author really talks about how, and she also has a version called The Male Brain, how women function differently because their brain develops differently and it really is wired differently. The female brain is a social brain. We're really kind of predisposed to be more attuned to social interactions and to perceived rejection. And there are evolutionary reasons for that. So, I mean, my book focuses a lot on rejection-sensitive dysphoria, which is a characteristic of symptoms for women with ADHD that is not included in the criteria right now, but a psychiatrist, Bill Dodson, kind of popularized the term. And it basically refers to extreme sensitivity to perceived rejection. And it makes sense that this would be more specific to females because females rely on one another because it takes a village, like we have kids and we need support. And then also females are smaller physically than men. So if you think about just evolutionarily, like it makes sense that females are more emotional, more sensitive, that they need social bonds, are more, socially savvy. Females have better social skills than men. And so obviously they're going to be able to mask or suppress a lot of the tendencies that males with ADHD have. And so I'm trying to really just kind of raise awareness on these issues in my book. But also the most important piece to me is more of an emphasis on the emotional part of ADHD because a lot of women are misdiagnosed or they're only diagnosed with depression or anxiety when there should also be an ADHD diagnosis there.
So, Dr. Gilly, I wanted to go back to the fulfillment and really practicing gratitude. What would be the most effective way to practice gratitude, to really combat the feeling of overwhelm, or overwhelmed, or feeling of burnout?
So I think feelings of gratitude are just a little bit different than feeling fulfilled. Feeling fulfilled is more selfish. Like you're filling your life with things that you love. And then gratitude is being thankful for the things that you have and thankful for the things that other people do for you. But in terms of how do you address burnout, I think it kind of starts with understanding what are your strengths and weaknesses. Like, for me, I learned as I was growing up what work environment would be best for me, and I can't do 9 to 5 monotony. Like I need change in my life, and I also need diversity, like different things. And I think in general, just for people who are neurodivergent, doing different things and kind of juggling in a sense is helpful, because the rejection sensitivity is real. And you're bound to fail in some respect in some things in your life. So sometimes when one ball falls, it's fine because I'm doing other things too. So if I feel like something isn't really going well in my psychology life, I have, my writing life to lean on. And then when I'm ready and I've recuperated, I can move back and again give it the same level of attention.
So it's very interesting. You talked about being selfish. More selfish is the feeling of fulfillment, and we know that it's so difficult for females, especially those whose bodies or brains are wired to really nurture, to change that attitude into self-advocacy, being selfish and self-fulfilled. So how can we practice that on a daily basis? You mentioned having a coffee and unwinding your feelings and so on. What are other practices apart from mindfulness, which is, I guess, part of fulfillment? But maybe I'm talking rubbish and multitasking here.
Yeah, I think it would depend. I was asking for that, wasn't I? I think that contradiction. I think ADHD is just a contradiction. It's very confusing. But I think self-care or doing something for yourself, doing something relaxing is going to vary from person to person. Like I know when people ask me that question, I always struggle. You might even see it actually in a future podcast. They'll say like, do you take a bath? Like I say, I write my book. Because I was just seeing clients not too long ago. And I guess it was like over a year ago, a little bit over a year ago. And that's when I decided to start working on my book. And I was seeing them all the time, like throughout the week. I was working Sundays, and my husband was saying like, Gilly, you need time for yourself. So I said, fine. So I stopped working Sundays, and I just thought, I can't sit here twiddling my thumbs. And so what's my hobby? It's writing. And my special interest is still psychology. So that is my self-care. Now I use Sundays to just listen to podcasts and learn and write. And I love it. And so for everyone, it's going to look different. I do enjoy sitting with coffee, but I'll usually be listening to something too.
Well, Dr. Gilly, it looks like you just like to indulge in your ADHD by multitasking and doing your book rather than relaxing. But I guess
that is relaxing.
Relaxing exactly for you. Now, we talked about some some ways to relax, some ways to combat ADHD, multitasking. But how can ADHD actually boost your strengths? What are the strengths of having this multitasking brain?
I think it's the sorry, water time. I think it's, first of all, the passion. And I mean, there's research showing that, I mean, some people, when they talk about this, they generalize and they say that people with ADHD are more creative, but it depends. Everything within psychology is like, it depends. There are different types of creativity, and people with ADHD are better with creative tasks that they can just like spew out information that's flexible, kind of like how I talked about with my book. I'm not interested in this, maybe I won't include it. I can just decide what I want to do. But when there are limitations or restrictions within a task where you're expected to be creative, like there are some rules, then that's going to be really hard for someone with ADHD, especially if they're not very intelligent. I mean, there's research on that. But yeah, we're creative, if you want to generalize. And also, I think, we have a very good sense of humor. There are a lot of comedians and performers who have ADHD. We also have a very blunt way of looking at the world, which is what I think can make us funny too, because we just kind of see things as they are and we're not afraid to say it. And I just love like the genuineness of having ADHD, like the people I work with. I love when there's like no subtlety, cut to the chase. What are you thinking? What do you want to work on? And, no fluff.
You and me, sister. Now, we know that some things are not good for people with ADHD. Definitely stress is one of it, or certain changes or uncertainty. That's something that really can add to the level of stress and turmoil. And that's something we should avoid, but change is inevitable. So how do we prepare for that? Well, you mentioned doing the things that we like. How can we be in that moment, but still go out of that moment that is very stressful and avoid that stress in a more fulfilling way?
So here's the thing about stress in general. When we try to avoid stress and when we try to avoid anxiety, we only feel more of it. It's like if I strap you to a chair and I attach like a device that can tell me how anxious you are, and I say, okay, now don't feel anxious. Like that's actually a metaphor out of ACT.
Yep.
You're gonna start freaking out, and it's because our body just naturally controls itself, just like we can naturally overcome or get better from a cold. If we feel anxious, it's usually for a protective reason, and your body knows what to do and it's going to be in control. So when you're shifting gears and you're trying to take control, it's only going to backfire. And
there is no good fulfillment moment. However, we know that organization skills and planning can definitely help. So what would you advise to somebody who wants to get back on track and feel more in control?
Yeah. So I do this thing with my husband every month. We have a family calendar, and I recommend it to almost all the families I work with. And at the beginning of the month or at the end of the previous month, we sit and we plan out the month in terms of who's dropping off what kid, who's picking up what kid, who's taking who to which doctor's appointment, scheduling out the doctor's appointment, scheduling out the trips, the visits. And we have it hanging in our kitchen, and we just know what's coming. So I think, communication, and like especially if you're a parent, planning things out in advance like that and making it visual can especially help for people with ADHD with executive functioning challenges, because a big part of executive functioning is holding information in your mind, which we stink at. So having the information in front of us is something that we really need to succeed. So having, a calendar or a planner, some people prefer technology. I don't like it. On my phone, it's too tiny. But you find what works best for you. The other thing that I started doing that has been really helpful is I open up a Word document every day and I have like a little list, very short, maybe 3 or 4 items of things I absolutely need to do today. And as I complete them, I erase them from the list. And then if there's a follow-up step that needs to be done, then I'll revise it and I'll write like for tomorrow. Or for example, for my book, if I can't remember, where I need to pick up from, or if I want to set a specific concrete goal, then I'll write it there and I'll say, next time, research for chapter 5 or whatever. So I see what's to come. But I think putting things in writing, if you're to take something away from this, that's the number one thing.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Gilly. We talked about what to do when you're combating multitasking. We are talking about hyperfocus. Now, you mentioned something that I guess every woman have heard in their life. Don't worry, darling. And we really dread that, hearing that from our loved ones, because that really makes us worry more, because that secret word of don't is really enforcing the next word that comes after that. And we know that cognitive behavioral therapy has got some benefits. So how can we use that therapy? And do you have some examples that could be useful to really implement in our lives?
Yeah. So ACT is actually a branch of cognitive behavior therapy. There are a lot of similarities between the two. The main difference is that cognitive behavior therapy is about challenging or changing the way that you think. Or like the content of thoughts. Like, for example, if you have the thought, I'm not going to finish this in time, you could ask yourself, well, the last time I had this thought, how did the story end? I probably finished in time. Or what's the worst thing that could happen? Let's say you don't finish in time. Is it going to be Armageddon? No. I could ask for an extension, or I can, figure it out. Like, life is not over. So that's more CBT. And then ACT is more kind of turning it on its face, which I love. So it's sort of like exposure therapy in a sense, if you've heard of that. So it's like, instead of don't worry, all right, let's worry now. Like, worry on purpose, or make yourself anxious on purpose, or just sit with it. If the anxiety hits you, we're just going to observe it like a scientist. What does it feel like in your body? What thoughts are you having? With curiosity, as opposed to fighting it. But overall, the goal is not to fight it. It's either to seek it out, turn it into a joke. Like, one ACT strategy is thinking about the thought in a funny accent. So if you have the thought, I love doing this with kids, but if you have the thought, I'm going to fail, you could just think like, I'm going to fail, and how is that different than I'm going to fail? Because 1, it's a lot less real. 2, it creates distance between you and your thoughts. And 3, it reminds you that it's just noise in your brain. Like, you can only put as much weight on your thought, right, as you have, control over. Like, you decide, like, do I want to make this important, or do I want to make this thought not very significant? Because at the end of the day, a thought is just like a burp or a hiccup.
Since we are talking about our thought process, and also I think with our disability or beauty or messiness of our attitude towards the world, time is critical. Sometimes we jump to conclusions too fast. So what would be the strategy to think it over without the rush?
To think things through. Yeah, I don't know. I think marinating and being sort of like before this episode, right? We met and we talked, and I like just being quiet and listening to what the person would like me to do. And then I just sit with the information and do some research, like either pull from stuff that I've done or listen to podcast episodes that are related or do my own reading. But I think it's important first to sit and just listen, take a few notes that summarize what you heard. And then, even like, for example, it's hard for me just to sit and think. I have to type. Like I literally, and I sit and I type all in caps because it's like big in my face. But I'll type my thinking process out. And then you basically can specify or pull more specific ideas out of what your brain concocted.
Put on your thinking hat and think things through slowly. Now, thank you, Dr. Gilly. There was lots of information, and I hope we can get the process through with you today, whoever is listening. Now, Dr. Gilly, if you look at yourself a couple of years back, when you were a little girl, when you were growing up, and before you started your family, is there a number one book that you wish you read that would help you in this career path?
Yes, it's On Writing by Stephen King. And the reason for that is because Stephen King was my favorite author when I was exploring my passion for writing and psychology too, because a lot of the topics, yes, they're like thrillers, but there's a big psychological element to a lot, if not all, of his books. And there's something about his writing style and like his personality that just really clicked with me. He's very genuine. He's like unabashedly him. But also, I think in the book On Writing, he describes really the process of becoming successful in your niche or whatever you're really passionate about, I think in a very realistic and practical and real way. So I think even if you're not a writer, it's still a helpful book to read because, like, for example, he talks about how in the beginning, you know, it's easy to go into writing and think like, oh, well, I think this jives or, you know, this works for me. But you're not really writing for yourself because people don't know you yet. You're really writing more for your audience. And then once people start to understand you through your writing and just understand you as a person, then you can inject more of you into the book. And I think it's just very practical and generalizable to a lot of different fields.
So how much of you is going to be in your book, Dr. Gilly?
We'll see. I mean, the thing is, it's hard not to include you, right, in your book because you're writing it. But I think what he was saying was you first, you know, you write it for you, then you edit it, you know, with a different lens, and then you give it to other people, a lot of different types of people, and you hear what they have to say, you know, and then you include whatever, not all the edits, but whatever feedback they give you that is overlapping or that suggests some people might not understand this. Like, it would be wrong to say, well, they should just understand it, or, you know, maybe they just aren't seeing it the right way. Like, you know, you need to think more about like the people who are going to be reading your work because that's why you're writing it.
Now, time for a great quotation. Multitasking is like juggling chainsaws and hoping you don't drop any. That's Jim Butcher for you. And I hope we managed to get you through this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Now, can you tell us, Dr. Gilly, your life lesson quote and how did it change you?
Yes, I can, but I do not have it memorized, so I'm going to have to pull it up. And I don't know if I have it here.
I do have it. I'm going to help you because I'm multitasking and I've got it prepared earlier. So, here it is by Stephen King. Talent renders the whole idea of rehearsal meaningless. When you find something at which you are talented, you do it, whatever it is, until your fingers bleed or your eyes are ready to fall out of your head.
Yeah. So that's, I know, I love it. It's very direct and blunt. But yeah, it's similar to what you were saying before, the quote about like how if you love something, it's not work. If you really are passionate about something and you're doing it, then you're going to live a fulfilling, meaningful life. And I think that's the most important thing, that whatever you spend all of your time doing in life, it should mean something to you.
So are your eyes going to fall out when you finish your book?
Yes, and I will love every minute of it.
Fantastic. We love it. Right. Let's imagine you could meet anyone in the world for a private breakfast. Who would it be and where would you go to have this lovely breakfast and share passion for talking about ADHD, multitasking, all things in life?
I don't know if it's shared passion about ADHD, but initially when I read a question like that, I think, well, which author or which psychologist would I want to meet with? But the truth is that if anything was possible and I could meet with anyone, I would want to meet with my mom, who passed away when I was 4. I know that's kind of a strange answer, but that's the truth. I think, when you lose a parent at such a young age, you just don't know much about them. And what you know about them is just based on what you've heard from other people. And you really learn about yourself when you really get to know your parents and like your family history. And so I think I would want that. I think it would be really hard. And where would I go? I think I picked Haifa, Israel, because she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she got her diagnosis around the time that we had bought an apartment there and we were actually going to move back. That's where my parents are from. And so I would want to be in the place that makes her happy.
Oh, that's beautiful, Gilly. I hope you will meet her again, hopefully. Do you remember much or nothing at all? Just memories brought by your relatives?
Here's the nice thing about my mom. She was an artist, and she actually also wrote a book. She wrote a children's book, and my grandmother self-published it for her after my mom passed away because she didn't have the chance to. But my mom is a very talented artist. I actually have a painting right here. She loved drawing women, actually, doing different things. This woman is standing with a blue umbrella next to her, but just kind of doing everyday things. I have it's like a speckled acrylic of a woman sleeping, another one of a woman who just got out of the bath. It's very, I don't know, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, colorful art. And so I just have that constantly around me, reminders of her. But she was apparently very eccentric, different person, which is very, I think, interesting to me. And it just, it makes a lot of sense.
Well, Dr. Gilly, I am surprised by this answer because we never had anybody who wants to meet their mother because usually if their mother was deceased, they had a chance to really know them better. So I'm really grateful for your experience, for sharing your beautiful part of life. And I hope that you will send us a picture so we can share it with our viewers, with our listeners, because it's a beautiful story to inspire others and really practice gratitude. Now, speaking about great women, Eleanor Roosevelt once said that women are like tea bags. We never know our true strength until we are put in hot water. And we know ADHD people are all constantly in hot water. So, how are you brewing?
How am I brewing in hot water?
Yep.
That's so true. I think, okay, here's the thing that's like built into ADHD. You were saying before, like, we don't work well under stress, but it's kind of a controversy, like a contradiction, because yeah, people freeze up. Like people with ADHD, they, have like ADHD paralysis, or they freeze up and it's hard for them to get work done when there's a lot, and then it piles up and it's a self-defeating cycle. But then also, actually, one of the conditions in which people with ADHD really succeed are stressful conditions. And in my book, I call this a light a fire under your A star factor, because it really kind of keeps us, moving. It's a wake up call whenever there is a looming deadline, or when we have a lot to do. Like, we thrive off of that, because when there's stress, there's excitement, there's dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter involved in ADHD that we are seeking for, that feel good neurotransmitter. So I think, when things are falling apart, it's usually temporary, and we only grow out of that like a, phoenix rising out of the ashes.
That would be interesting concoction when it comes to tea. Thank you so much, Dr. Gilly. That was fabulous stories you brought to our attention. Even though it was difficult to keep attention, I was just told our playing with her was definitely getting some people difficult to focus. Thank you for transforming our lives. I hope people can learn from our experiences today. And if you can't have enough, you definitely be on the lookout for that book. It's going to be published this year, right?
Well, it's due this year, probably until everything is, the editing and all of that. I would say around 2026.
Fantastic. Well, I hope we can see the preview of that sometime, and we will be happy to report to our audience. Now, thank you very much for today's presence. And as always, our positivity quote comes from positive thinking only and goes, look for something positive in each day, even if some days you have to look a little bit harder, even if some days you have to keep hyper focus. Finally, as Maya Angelou says, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. Today is your day to hug the future, hug the positivity you want. Thank you, Dr. Gilly.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me on the show. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.